31.32. It's already gone past the pole lap time at the moment, and it's a 33.0, so still P9 for the moment. A lot of drivers may be finding their sweet spot in terms of pace, but trying to get more at this stage is going to be a challenge because, again, you have that delta time, which is always lurking in the corner, telling you you need to push a little bit harder, and it can really throw you into a false sense of trying to go for a time that is unrealistic. Chappers, again, the Ferrari's struggling a little bit with pace, a bit like the McLarens, and I must say the Red Bull's also struggling. So are we seeing actually the fact that the more stable cars are really struggling on these intermediate tires?
I think it's a combination of that and the fact that realistic cars, when it's all about feel and the control and how you can handle the skyrocketing temperatures, it's less about the car you're in and more about the ability of the driver. Big laps have come in there. Chaps is finding a little bit of time, does need to get his skates on ever so slightly. Same with Alex Gillen, who's been bumped back down into P13, courtesy of improvements for Matt 212, for Dak Gavins, and for Matty D13, who's up in 9th place. Rasinchai retiring. That's a bit of an ego push from the Season 5 champ. Chappers needs this at 14th at the moment, but he's up into 3rd, blitzing the final sector. His middle sector was substandard. His final sector only 300ths off the best of the session, and he'll definitely be through to the next part of qualifying. That is going to raise the eyebrows of a number of big names. Infratic down in 12th, Gillen 14th now, only 4/10 clear of the drop zone. Tiernan Malik has found an improvement on his second set of tyres, dipping his toes into the 132, currently holding 8th place at the moment.
Also, just wanted to say, if you look at the track map, you can see a lot of drivers going very, very slow on their warm-up laps. A lot of drivers starting their laps now, so maybe less prevalent to watch on the map. But is there a case also of some drivers overcooking the tyres or getting them too hot to start the lap? Maybe you want to start the lap with slightly cold tyres still, so that they only overheat towards Sector 3. There's a lot of strategy in this, and I think we're seeing, as you said, some drivers just nailing more than others and thinking outside of the box. Huge snap of oversteer for Super Noodle Bagel, and that means throughout all of these long straights of Sector 3, it's going to be losing a 10th or 2 down here. Let's see if we can spot these sector times. It's looking all right for the moment, but maybe with that dirty air through the last chicane here, might be on for a mediocre time. Yeah, the time has gone already. The mistakes have been made beforehand, and that's still P18, sadly. And with that being effectively their last lap, because they will be overheating the tyres, that is unfortunately probably them out of the session.
100%. Super Noodle Bagel gone, joined by the second McLaren of Lenz the Goat, slapped with a 35.1. Riccio 3 needs to get a time on the board here, as does Alex Gillen, who's going to be one of the last over the line. Riccio 3, remember, picked up pole position a few weeks ago in Qatar, could be knocked out in the first part of qualifying though. The Alpine charging through the Casio triangle, looked a little bit reluctant to go through, but as he cuts the beam, it is an improvement up into P4. These times are going to continue to flip-flop. Grid jokes on the fresh set of tyres, goes fastest overall. Matty D13 was fastest in the first sector, but didn't find an improvement on his lap time, stays only 11th. The second McLaren of Chesnord Gaming also under pressure, as is Alex Gillen, who has been pushed right down to the bubble.
Yeah, this is crunch time now for Alex. He needs to go for this. It's looking tidy for the moment, but on the pit straight, still got... not on the pit straight, on the support race pit straight, actually, so technically correct. But using the battery still to try and get some speed, so he saved a lot of the battery, maybe not using it because of traction purposes. This is looking like a solid time for the moment. Really struggling with the traction. Across the line, will it be enough? P15, it's not. It's not safe at the moment.
Well, it's not going to be Infratic. Infratic is gone 16th at best. Is it Chesnord Gaming? No, doesn't improve. Stays 17th. Super Noodle Bagel is done. The reigning champion has escaped qualifying 1 by the skin of his teeth. 0.04 of a second separating Alex Gillen and Infratic. If Fabio got his final lap in, that would have been Gillen starting 16th around a circuit where it's very difficult to overtake. He pulled it out of the bag in the final sector with an 18 flat because he was down by a 10th on his personal best through Sector 1 and Sector 2.
Yeah, just looking at those sector times, that was so... I mean, probably that oversteer through the Casio triangle was probably what saved him, to be honest. He got on the throttle super early, and that meant just saving that extra 10th of a second was enough. But, whoa, a way to just put it all on the line. He could have made it a lot easier for himself. And, yeah, with Meraki and P8, you have to ask yourself, where's that pace? And will he be able to find the pace? No doubt he will on the dry tyres, but just shows to you how sort of peaky the performance can be when you're not in optimal conditions.
100%. Going through Fabio's chat, some people saying that it was a strategic disaster class from him, which is not good news at all for Fabio, missing out by the barest of margins, just a third of a tenth, separating himself and Alex Gillen. Matty D13 was also under the cosh, made a mistake on his final lap after going fastest in the first sector, but does get through from P14. Tim Varda didn't have to go again, and at the top, it is Lolanoba who tops qualifying one, and by 5 milliseconds ahead of Gridrick, takes the intermediate pole time. So that is an extra point added to the total of the RB driver.
Indeed, and yeah, it's I think maybe a disappointing session for quite a few drivers there. I think there'll be quite a few head scratches. So we have indeed Lolanoba that takes that point with the Cash App Racing Bulls, but we have crucially Infratic out, Chesnoid Gaming out, Jorrit van Griffen. Right, Van Heffen, sorry, I'm pronouncing the name incorrectly. Super Noodle Bagel in P19 and Lens the Goat P20. So very, very unfortunate for them. And the times really tapering off after Chesnois.
100%, really interesting. Well, Kieran, that was a fascinating session, wasn't it? We almost had one of the championship protagonists there, knocked out in Q1.
We did indeed. I mean, I was keeping an eye on everybody, trying to work out and watch about 12 or 13 different streams at the same time, but my highlight is Lolanoba pretty much surprising himself that he grabbed that into pole position point. Primo, pole position, yeah, he did, he grabbed it, but yeah, fascinating one there, and some, yeah, big ones out in Q1. Gillen getting through by the skin of his teeth. I think that was even too close for comfort for him. We'll load into Q2 very, very shortly, of course, but I'm enjoying it. I hope you two are as well.
Really fun session. I think it was really interesting to see the dynamic because you had to be kept on your toes. You had drivers finding massive amounts of time in the second half of the session on the brand new intermediate tyres. That's what left Alex Gillen under the microscope. Tim McMahon was in a little bit of danger at some stage as well. And obviously Fabio didn't get a final lap in, and that's what cost him dearly.
Yeah, and John, I was just going to say, John, before we just about rejoin that qualifier session, your sort of premonitions of being on that inter-tyre and, you know, all sorts of stability issues for these drivers came true in the end. I mean, we saw drivers struggling and we saw a lot of top drivers struggling.
I will say also, we saw a lot of drivers adapting their driving style. You saw when we were on board, a lot of drivers taking 2 or 3 snaps at the wheel, trying to get the car turned in, especially in Sector 3. And that is a very common technique, for example, in rally. When you're not confident, you just get the initial bite of the tyres, and then you try and take a second bite to get the actual grip. And I think the drivers that really struggled in that session are the drivers that didn't try different techniques on the first or even second run. To get the optimal pace for the end, and we really saw those times all plummet all the way down by I think 0.3 of a second at the end there, so it had a big impact.
Well, without further ado, then we're into Q2 already, so Tom and John, it's back to you.
Oh, the intermediate tyres have been put back in the box, and now it's the yellow stripe mediums that are going to be strapped on for this session. This might feel a little bit more representative of what we could see in the race. We have got, however, Tim Mark out on the intermediate tyres. Interesting decision from him there. Whether he just wants to try and save some of his mediums, I'm not 100% sure on that one. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if this has as much of an impact. I think this will be where the realistic cars, we start to see a little bit more of them coming to the forefront. We didn't see it too much in the first qualifying session. It was McLaren, it was Red Bull, it was Ferrari, the main 3 teams that were really struggling towards the back, Williams as well. But this is an opportunity for Alex Gillen in particular to reset. Lucky, his words not mine, after that first qualifying session. Wasn't quite up to speed after nearly missing quali. He has got another opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just thinking actually out of the box a little bit that maybe some drivers took a sort of compromised setup a little bit, or a setup more adapted to the dry tyres that will now come to fruition, or if you're already knocked out, has not worked out for you. So we might see also a change in sort of the balance of the car. There's obviously limited things you can change, so it's going to be a very interesting session. And for those starting on the intermediate tyres, you have to ask the question as well, are they leaving it a little bit too late to get readapted? They're meant to be on mediums,
well,
yes.
What I would say is, and it's been pointed out in the chat as well, if you remember, you only get 1 set of medium tyres in qualifying, where you get, I think you get 3 sets of the soft compound tyres, even in full qualifying. So they will be trying to just treat them with a little bit of respect. That's why Ben's gone out, you can imagine, on the intermediate tyres. It could be a mad dash come the end of this qualifying session. Yes, it might be slightly backloaded, but that'll create a real skirmish to try and find some track position in the last 5 minutes.
Yes, I didn't really. Yeah, that's true. Actually, it's been quite a while since I've actually driven any competitive racing in the F1 game, so I did forget the fact that you only get one set of mediums. But that throws a spanner in the works, doesn't it? Because if you go out on a tire now, and you set your fastest lap, for example, Tuki, 129.1, well, you're using up your tyres, aren't you? And then you get toward the end of the session where the track is at its fastest, or it should be at its fastest, and you've got a worn set of tyres that are missing a few tenths. So this will be a very interesting sort of strategic session, even before we've started the race.
It's going to be a really interesting balancing act, though, we have to say, because do you try and get that solid banker time in first at the start of the session, or do you wait and just leave yourself under pressure come the end and effectively turn it into a one-shot qualifying, a one-lap shootout for some of the big names? Tuki fastest, like you said, on a 29.1. Max D13 doesn't go faster. He is on a 29.4. Datkovic's also electing to go out there early on the medium tyre. Should be fastest? No. Poor first sector, I should say, for Datkovic. Lost half a second in the first part of the lap. He's nearly 4 tenths down on Tuki. Ben has set a lap time, a banker lap on the intermediates, 3.5 seconds off the outright pace. That is, of course, because they don't want to use the mediums at the start of the session, some of these cars. So this is a bit of a double-edged sword. Really interesting to see how this is going to unfold as we go through the qualifying session. Is the race today? Yes, the race is today, and I'll get into the wild card as well. If you missed the start of the stream, this is for the one and only time this season. We are running full qualifying Q1, Q2, Q3 before 100% 53 lap race, and the wild card is using different tyre compounds in each of the 3 sessions. We had the intermediate tyres in qualifying 1, it would be the medium tyres in qualifying 2, and for Q3 it would be the soft compound tyre.
Yeah, just want to say, Joris leaving the session there. I think going back to the drawing board in terms of maybe setup, going to try a few things out with the time that has left before the race session. So, across the line, Karim deciding, as you discussed earlier, Tom, that maybe just putting other drivers under pressure is the correct strategy. A 28.8 right there, and it's all happened in that first and last sector. There were some really strong times there from Karim, so that Alpine has a good turn of pace in in a straight line, which is paradoxical when you look at their performance in the real world. And sector 1, which is a very sort of demanding balance sector where you need to have a stable car, so everything working out for the moment. Grid jokes obviously on the intermediate tyres, just not really pushing, just trying to keep the car out of the wall and get a sighter lap in. But yeah, Meraki, Tiamat Marduk and Grid Jokes, the drivers that have set an intermediate time. And this is Meraki, who will be, I think, diving back into the pits at the end of this lap, probably.
What will be fascinating is if somebody manages to get through on the intermediate tyres. Now, it's an almost nil possibility, let's be honest, because everybody's going to head out on the medium tyres. And you find it so unlikely, don't you, that 6 drivers are going to fail to get a lap time in. But it could be very interesting, and somebody might be finding themselves #blessed to come in the end of this if they do manage to scrape through on an intermediate banker lap. Lonova picked up intermediate pole in the first part of qualifying, setting down a lovely benchmark as he's in that V-Cub car with a decent run of form under his belt. Of course, picking up the win a few weeks ago in Qatar. Decent first sector for Lolly. Purple, it has to be said, actually, by just over a tenth of a second to Kareem 17 and to Tuki as well. Very, very closely matched, though, the 4 times that we've got so far, with the exclusion of that guy Vince, who had a little bit of a sticky time. Didn't have the best start to his lap.
Yeah, no, a lot of people struggling in that first sector just to get the feel of the tyres turning in. You could see on board with Lolanoba through sector 1, it was turning in and then the front was washing out a little bit. So perhaps the setup just a little understeery for the medium tyres. Obviously, most drivers would do the entire qualifying session on the soft compound tyre. So it really does throw a spanner in the works. That guy Vince improves to a 28.7. He's put 3 laps on those tyres now. So that is probably the end of the good performance on the mediums. So we'll have to wait and see. As Lolanoba across the line, first lap on the mediums, is it a good one? It is indeed. 28.3, nearly 4 tenths of a second clear of that guy Vince. So the Racing Bulls working incredibly well in this session.
Talker of a lap time that from our Italian stallion. Nearly 4/10 of a second put on the head top of his teammate. Interesting call there from Datkovich. Obviously wasn't feeling comfortable with his first flying lap of the session, but remember the medium tyres, they don't degrade as much as the softs. Look at that Riccio 3 desperately scrabbling for grip as he fails to get the power down and slots into 4th position. You would feel he might have been ahead of his teammate Cream 17 if it wasn't for that massive whack of oversteer coming out of the Casio triangle. Concept 7 been very strong in qualifying, picked up a 2nd place in Mexico a few weeks ago, was on pole for that one as well. Slots into 6th position. Here's Aston Martin just behind the Ferrari of Tukey. 7 lap times have been set on the mediums and a further 3 on the inters. Chappers, Razin, Gillen, Safsa, Matt 2 on 2, waiting until the end of the session to come out on their slick tyres. Tim Malik fancies it now, maybe just so he can get a little bit of track space and not leave himself vulnerable if he does encounter a bit of traffic.
I think maybe what we might see is drivers coming out at the end of the session to do either 2 consecutive laps or 1 push lap, 1 cool down lap, and then another push lap at the end of the session. There's still just about enough time to do that if they exit the pits now. And we do see quite a few drivers leaving the pits on their out laps, like Alex Gillen and Razin, for example. So they may be doing 2 consecutive laps, because obviously if you do 1 lap and then come back into the pits, you're putting extra laps on those tires, so it's much better to go out maybe at the end of the session and do 2 consecutive laps, use the least amount of the tires possible to give yourself the best chances. But they are leaving it late. For example, if somebody impedes them, or if they get a bit of damage, or if they just spin off and lose the time, they may run out of time in the session to set a lap. So they're playing it a bit risky, let's put it that way, as Team Marduk gets underway for their lap into the first sector. It's such a difficult turn 1 and turn 2 there. You're kind of hanging on for dear life and hoping that you don't touch the curb. If you do touch the curb, you are going wide, you are going out into the gravel trap or onto the grass.
First sector for Meraki. Well, I say good first sector, it's actually not a particularly good first sector, because Datkovich absolutely blitzed it and Meraki was about a second down through the first part of the lap. So maybe just a warm-up lap, trying to get reacclimatised to the slick tyres. Which is another thing that we have to bear in mind. The likes of Cream 17, Datkovich, maybe they weren't fully up to speed yet back on the mediums compared to the intermediates that we ran in qualifying 1. So many different factors and dynamics that we have to think about in this qualifying session. It'll be interesting to see how Tim Marlin's going. I think he's going for a similar strategy, it has to be said, just trying to get a feel of how these medium tyres are going, just bringing them in, and then he can go for the bonsai lap with 4 minutes remaining.
Yeah, Maraki's looked a little bit perplexed. You can see it in his face that he doesn't really understand where that time went. But good news for him, he'll have another chance to either do a lap now at the end if he saved the battery, or just do a cool down lap and go for it. Let's see. Oh, he's coming back into the pits. Okay, well, that's not something that I anticipated. That wasn't on my bingo cards. He's leaving it quite late in the session then to maybe just refuel. Maybe he didn't have enough fuel. That might be the factor. Team Marduk across the line again, as you said, just warming up. He is going around for another lap, so let's see if they can get the pace on board. Razin now on his lap, looking at the sector times. Yeah, he's backed up as well, so a lot of drivers struggling toward the end of the session. That is not good news for them.
100%. Alex Gillen still struggling full stop though, was 0.3 of a second down on Safso, who did temporarily have the fastest first sector. 0.3 the difference between 2 former champions, Season 1 champion versus Season 2 and Season X champion. Alex Gillen just continuing this lack of speed that he's struggling with at the moment. He was off pace, wasn't he, in Qatar a few weeks ago. He wasn't quite up to speed last week in Brazil either. Struggled in the wet in that Sauber car. Can he get the front end to bite? Looks a little bit reluctant to really go through the Casio triangle as he desires. Out of the final corner we come with Alex Gillen. What is the time going to be? It's a 29.4. Safso 28.7. The reigning champion is massively under the cosh here with just 2.5 minutes left to go.
Yeah, Grid Joke's going incredibly fast as well, and as I say that, he crosses the line P2 just to emphasise the point. So Alex P9, this is very dangerous territory. We've seen this before. It's a little bit of deja vu for Alex, so he needs to put in a really good lap to him at Marduk. This is looking like a solid pace as well, so he has gone for another push lap, one after the other. Will it be the correct strategy? Going across the line, a little bit of oversteer and understeer there, and it puts him P6 on the cusp. I'm not sure if that's safe, really. Matt 212, another driver struggling. He might have just enough time to go around, do a cool down lap, and then go for another push lap.
Tim and Marlett setting the exact same time as Kareem 7T. Alex Gillen, that is not going to be good enough. That is 100% the case. Now down in position number 10, finding himself with a bit of deja vu going on. If we remember back to qualifying one, he was on the bubble for pretty much the entirety of the first part of qualifying, and it could be, ironically, his teammate from 7 days ago. The drivers that collided going into the pit lane gave themselves 10-second penalties and pretty much ruined any chances of picking up some decent points. That does push him down into 11th place, albeit with 90 seconds to go. Razin Chai tracking nicely through the first sector, fastest in the middle sector by a couple of tenths as well. If he doesn't absolutely make a mess of this final Casio triangle, he should be lighting up the timing charts. Looked a little bit unstable at the rear a couple of times, almost pitches it into the pit wall, but he cuts the beam and does indeed go fastest despite the mistakes and the scruffy exit out of the final chicane. 28.1, Alex Gillen down to 11th, now 12th as Chappers slaps in a 28.6. Tim Mark under pressure now as well, along with Kareem 7T, who is cutting the beam with an improvement and takes himself away from the danger zone. 28.4 for the season 9 champ.
Karim has done a blinder through that sector too. He is 2/10 clear on that alone. That is incredible, and that has made the difference there compared to Lolinoba. That is just mastery through the Degners and indeed through the hairpin section and all of that, mastering the turn-in and indeed the traction. And I think that will put a lot of drivers under pressure, knowing that they have to absolutely perform through the S bends, as you can see there, and you get on board now with grid jokes approaching the hairpin. Really difficult here because you turn in, you've got to get the brakes and not lock up. It does make the apex. There is a wider line that you can take there as well to attempt to get more speed. But yeah, the car's a bit iffy, is saying Razin throughout the last couple of turns. Probably the tyres just out of their comfortable temperature window. And with that second sector, I must say, maybe he did push them and overheat them a little bit, but it's worked out for him, let's say that.
100%, but the three championship protagonists all up against it. Tim Monica's retired, doesn't feel he can go faster. 8th at the moment, only takes 3 drives to bump him out of qualifying. Meraki yet to get a slick time on the board either, currently 15th, and Alex Gillen, the reigning champion, languishing down in 12th. Razin into the pits, he's done fastest at the moment. Grid Jokes is 4th. Can he take that away from the Haas? Yes, he does. 28 flat for the Silver Arrow as he charges right to the top. Tim Mark still in 8th at the moment as his former teammate Safso up into P3. The Aston Martin should be safe with that lap. Kareem into the pits, and Alex Gillen is done. He's cut the beam and he's not improved. Alex Gillen is out in qualifying 2. Couldn't find the time when it mattered most. Matty D13 bumps Alex down a further spot into 13th. Both Saubers very much up against it at the moment. Tukey, currently the driver on the bubble, but not improving through Sector 1. Is, though, improving through Sector 2.
Yeah, a 39.4 for Alex in Sector 2. That's a second off the pace. He's made a mistake through there. Can Tukey get an improvement here? Is P10 on the cusp right now? Let us see across the line, the battery flashing. It's not going to be an improvement. Can Concept do anything about it? No. That leaves Meraki as the final driver across the line. What is it going to be? That is an improvement, but by how
P6,
much?
I think. P5.
P5. So he does make it through. And Alex Gillen, I think that leaves him in P15.
Slowest. Wow, wow, wow. Tim Malik has his blushes spared there in 9th, but Alex Gillen, slowest in qualifying 2, and is knocked out along with Matty D13, Concept 7, Matt 212, and Tukey right at the last gasp with a buzzer beater from Meraki to kick out the Scarlet Ferrari car. Big shock there. Alex Gillen, we saw he wasn't quite up to speed in Q1, and that has transpired into P15 on the grid in Q2. Kieran, I don't think any of us were expecting that.
No, I was on board with his lap as he was making his way through Spoon. He said he had to send it. He was right to, but he sent it too hard into Spoon and went way off on the right-hand side. But yeah, he's saying himself, this is what happens when you don't have a lot of practice. But yeah, he will be starting down in P15 and will be a bystander for Q3. A big shock there. And as you said, Ben very much spared his blushes there. Just about made it through on the bubble. But yeah, Gillen, twice now he was sort of on the bubble. We saw he was on the bubble in Q1 and Q2, yeah, just didn't get Spoon right at all. So he'll be starting from P15. He'll watch on Q3. And now it comes to the point, and now it comes to the question of who could grab pole position. Tom, any changes from your prediction?
It looks quick. Razin looks really, really strong. He still thinks he can win this championship. Yes, he's a little bit far back. He's had a difficult couple of weeks, in particular 7 days ago at Brazil. If he can keep this rich vein of form, take pole position, try and take the win as well, at least get back onto the podium for the first time since round 2, that will set himself up nicely. But Lolly looks strong as well. It's these drivers that, there's that group that are 4th, 5th and 6th in the championship. Razin, Lolanoba and Datka Vince. All of them look pretty decent. All of them have a big opportunity to make a huge statement here with Alex Gillen down in 15th.
And John, just quick from you then, any changes to your pole position prediction?
Well, I kind of have to because Alex Gillen is out. So
same question still applies.
I mean, he was either P16 or P15. It didn't really make a difference. I have to say probably Lolanoba or Razin. So I'm going to go Lolanoba to not be boring. Let's put it that way. I think just his ability to get the best out of the tires straight away is a big factor here. And when you're adapting again to another compound of tires, that can have a huge pressure on other drivers. So hopefully that'll work out for him.
Well, without further ado then, Tom, John, take us through Q3 and let's find out who gets pole position.
Somebody that won't, the reigning champion, 15th in Q1, scraped through, but 15th again in Q2 means it's an early shower for Alex Gillen, and he will not get the luxury of using these red strap soft compound tyres in qualifying 3. Remember everybody, this is important as well. We are getting a lobby reset after this qualifying session, which means of course the soft tyres and the mediums and the intermediates, if they need them, will be handed back to the drivers for the race, which effectively means as well they can burn up as many sets as they possibly want to in this qualifying session. They don't have to use a used tyre run or do a used tyre run at some stage in this session. It's going to be unlikely we see 3 lap time set, let's be honest, because well, you're going to be really up against it to try and get that 3rd lap in. But 2 runs on 2 fresh set of soft compound tyres, absolutely flat out.
Yeah, they really need, have no excuse now to go out on a set of intermediates. They want to all be out on softs to get fully accustomed. The grip difference is just, disconcerting as a driver, for lack of a better word, when you turn in and then immediately you have the grip, immediately you have the confidence, and then it's all about just trying to work with that, trying to get yourself back up to pace. And we are going to see maybe a few drivers struggle from the get-go here, but in theory, seeing as most drivers put in practice for the qualifying laps on the soft tyres, everybody should be up to speed. Well, one person locking tyres, Razin being extremely aggressive, almost putting on the handbrake there into the hairpin. Will that cost him into Spoon? We'll have to wait and see. Lock up on the front right tyre, so it shouldn't be too bad. But he does make it through Spoon okay, carrying quite a bit of speed. If you get yourself over the curbs here, you can get yourself in a bit of trouble, but it looks like everything has worked itself out so far. Again, most of the drivers just going for a banker lap, I'd say, at this point. So the time's not too crucial unless you can get a really good one on the board. I tell you what, looking at Razin's time, this might be an early start to his bid for pole position.
On the back foot a little bit though, because Kareem 70 has smashed the first sector. Razin Chai 27.7. That is the benchmark. The gauntlet laid down, immediately eclipsed by our Italian stallion Lolanoba, who was 4/10 quicker in the final sector. Tim Malik, terrible middle sector, lost half a second to Lolanoba and Razin Chai down in 5th. Slowest of the times we've got so far. Maraki, championship leader, slots in between the RB and the lead pass of Razin Chai. Kareem 70 missing the first apex of the Castillo triangle. Is that going to cost him as he's pulling gears in that Alpine up to the line? 27.7 P3, and after that strong start for Kareem 70, another driver that really grappled for grip in the final sector. Lolanoba is 2/10 clear of anybody in the final sector, and the only driver within 4/10 is the one sat in P2.
Yeah, that is a solid lap time. I don't know exactly where they've got that time from, just probably keeping the tyres alive, but that is something that drivers will be perplexed about, and it stays in the back of your mind. When you look at the sector times, when you come back to the pit box, you think, hang on a minute, how did I lose 4/10 of a second on a sector which is effectively 2 corners and 2 long straights? It doesn't compute in your head, so it will be very tricky. Grid Jokes, another driver that has been very on form in terms of pace in qualifying laps, so let us see if Grid Jokes can get themselves out of P10, the only person to not set a lap time for the moment. But it's also encouraging to see everybody in the 128s at least. A lot of people at least just getting a sighter lap in. A bit of traffic here, a bit of dirty air manifesting itself. Grid Jokes across the line. It won't be good enough for the front row for the moment, but P4 means that at least it's a solid foundation to build on.
Incredibly close. Top 5 covered by just 0.2 of a second, and this is big for the championship as well, with the season 4 champ Meraki finding his A game once again. 12 created series pole positions for Jake, and he'll be hoping that everybody else finds himself unlucky as he bumps that number up to 13. As we're halfway through the final part of qualifying, and it is Lolinoba making a late charge for the championship, currently sitting pretty on provisional pole, 0.08 of a second ahead of Meraki with Cream 17 and Grid Jokes holding down, locking down the second row on the grid. Tim Marduk under pressure had a terrible middle sector, lost half a second, 0.6 of a second to Razin Chai in the middle part of the lap. Got to tidy that one up. Dak Gavins as well, detached a little bit at the back of the group, 28.6. He's going to have to find comfortably over half a second.
Yeah, that's a lot of time to find, really. Anybody in the 28s at this point has either made a mistake or is severely off the pace, really. Just looking at the sector times, it is the case that there's just drivers making mistake here and there. I'm not seeing any like super slow sector times. It's just maybe a lock-up. For example, for Tim Marduk, it's literally sector 2 that has messed him up, really. He's 0.5 of a second down, and that is essentially all of his lap time right there in sector 2. So just maybe getting a bit wide through the Degners or just locking up to the hairpin, and that is easily half a second. But when you've made a mistake once, it can become so easy to do it again and just settle yourself into a non-optimal rhythm. That yeah, it's going to be tricky for drivers that have been struggling all throughout qualifying. But in principle, if you've got yourself into the top 10, you're having a relatively good time in the day. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. They've still got 4 minutes, to call it 5 minutes, to get their last runs in. And we are seeing drivers activating now with 3 drivers on out laps.
It's interesting when you do delve into the sector times, because in sector 1 everybody's fairly evenly matched. Most drivers are in either the high 31s or the low 32s, the exception Ricky and Dak Gavins in 32.2, and then Kareem blitzing, acing that first sector with a 31.8, fastest of anybody. It's then the middle sector and the final sector where we see big separation gaps. Tim Marduk 0.6 of a second down, Dak Gavins 0.7 lost in that middle sector, and in the final sector nobody has been able to hold a candle to Lolinoba, the only driver in the 16s in that final sector, 0.2 faster than anybody else, as it is Safso, the season 1 champion, for the kick-off what might be his final flying lap in qualifying. Maybe a little bit more fuel in the back of that Aston Martin car just in case he makes a blunder on this first flying lap. Interesting use of the curb there going through the first part of the first couple of corners, because it can unsettle the car. He's now attacked with great confidence. You'll be hoping at least the sweeps of the first sector. Some of the best corners in the history of F1 are now climbing up the hill through Dunlop. Don't want to dip a wheel in the gravel, and Safso choosing not to play with fire there on the exit of turn number 7. Are we improving as we head through the first part of Degners? Down by half a tenth and a little bit wide, just gets caught out by the curb at the inside of Degner 1.
Yeah, just I think that turn 2 use of the curb has been the difference in that time, and they really need a better sector 2, as you said. That's where the time is being lost. Will it be sort of a good time? I'm not sure. I saw a few sections where they were going a little bit wide, not clearly hitting the apex, although that is a solid attempt at spoon, that's for sure. Carrying the speed, early deployment of the battery, lovely stuff. It looks like it will be all right for Safso, maybe a good improvement. There's still also about, I'd say, 0.2 to find in the last sector. So into the Casio triangle here. Will it be a good end to the lap? Very, very nicely on the apex, braking perhaps a little bit early, I'd say there. Not getting on the curb on the exit and going the shortest route to the line is a 27.8 P6. Improvement by 0.2 of a second, but will it be enough to keep him in that midfield?
Improves by 0.2, but doesn't improve positionally, staying in P6 as things stand. Dak Gavins much better through the first sector. Needs to keep that up through the middle sector. Yes, 0.75 of a second up, but is 0.3 down on the benchmark through the middle part of the lap. If he can get into the high 27s, that'll maybe give him a chance of starting inside the top 6 or 7 places. Rotating nicely through the Casio triangle. Foot flat to the floor as the RB will cut the beam. They're bookending it at the moment, and it is only P7 for Dak Gavins. Does get into the high 27s with a good final sector, but still comfortably down on what his teammate can manage. Nobody seems to be finding the traction and the grip through the Casio triangle that Lolinoba managed. Cream 17 down by half a tenth through sector 1.
how aggressive he was though through the Degness. That's impressive commitment there. Any snap of oversteer and you are immediately in trouble. You can see a difference with the confidence and the setup of the car, to be fair. For him, very sort of, I like to say a Max Verstappen-esque sort of setup applied to the car there, where you get it turned in, the rear rotates. As long as the front remains planted, you can get it through the turn. But will that pay dividends or not? Looking at the sector times, we're waiting to get a sector 2 time, and I think Karim's backed off.
See as we cut the beam to start the final sector, but yes, has
off.
Definitely backed off. It looked a little bit unstable, didn't it, going through the hairpin just as you come up the hill after the 2 Degness. So Karim backing out of that one, was already down through the first sector and leaving himself with a little bit more work to do, a little bit of heavy lifting going into the final part of qualifying. Watch for this man, Grid Jokes, in the silver arrow, has looked absolutely rapid so far. Hasn't topped a qualifying session, I don't believe yet, but has been right in the thick of the action. If he can just extract those little few more tenths of performance out of himself and the Mercedes machinery that he sits inside, he'll be a great bet to start potentially on the front row and maybe from provisional pole position as we head up through Dunlop Curve now and up towards the 2 Degness. Will it be an improvement for the Mercedes? Needs to try and find it if he's going to challenge the likes of Lolanoba and the championship leader, and it's a big first sector. 31.6. That is huge from Grid Jokes. A quarter of a second clear of anybody else already.
That is, wow, okay, now we are getting to crunch time, as they say, and people are bringing out the last cards that they have to play, and that is certainly one where you think to yourself, what are the other drivers thinking, looking at the sector times? Obviously, probably everybody out on track now, so they won't have a tracking of those sector times unless people in their chat are actively telling them that, but that is a statement to make toward the end of the session. Might have now, it's too far back to have a slipstream, but this is looking like a stellar lap from Grid Jokes. Will it be enough though?
Purple, as things stand, just has to negotiate the Casio triangle. The Mercedes riding the curbs absolutely beautifully around the final corner. Should smash the benchmark out of the park, and by a third of a second, Grid Jokes takes over at the front of the field. Cream 70 again struggling to get the car to bite through the final chicane. Will it be an improvement? Was down through sector 1 and through sector 2. Does find a little bit in the final sector, but it's third place at best. Safso fan improvement again. Still only 5th place on a 27.7. Razin Chai fastest in the middle sector. Tim Mardik 7th only for the former 2-time champ. Razin Chai to the front row with a late lap there, but still a 10th down. Can Lolanoba find the speed? Does he have anything left in the RB? The answer is no, and it is still only 3rd. What can the championship leader do though? Chapper's rounding the final corner. He's up into 6th place in the Scarlet Ferrari car. Meraki is up by just under a 10.5, but unless this final sector is absolutely out of this world from the championship leader, it will not be pole position, and it will be going to Brackley and to the Mercedes team, with Grid Jokes taking it ahead of Razin Chai. Meraki round in the final corner, already have his main rivals, and does pick up a couple of places to start from P3 on the grid. But it is Grid Jokes with an outstanding first sector that steals a march on his rivals.
Yeah, crucially, that 3rd sector for Razin, he had everything in that one. He was set for pole, but it wasn't enough in that last one. So that means Grid Jokes qualifies on pole position, followed by Razin on the front row of the grid. Meraki, Lolanoba, P3 and 4 on the second row, with Karim probably a little bit disappointed in P5, to be fair. Chappers P6, Safso P7, Tim Mardik P8 will be very disappointed, with that guy Vince and Ricky rounding out the top 10. It's fascinating to see that the sector times have been dominated by 3 drivers. You had Grid Jokes, Razin, and Lolanoba with the different fastest purple sectors there. So a very mixed qualifying session, right?
That was great stuff. Grid Jokes on pole position there, as quoting him, Singapore on top. That was a great lap there in the Mercedes, and yeah, he's got the front row seat down towards turn 1, and turn 1 at Suzuka has had some interesting histories, let's just say that. Let's talk to a certain 1990s period. I can't think of a specific incident in mind, but hey, turn 1 at Suzuka always seems to be a couple of fireworks. It's downhill on entry, it's turn 1, it's a medium speed corner where you're not actually shaving a lot of speed off, especially in these cars in turn 1. It's turn 2 you start to go down the gears, Tom. So that makes for a bit of an interesting first corner, especially because after that you've got the S's.
People will be desperate to try and make up places because it's the first opportunity they'll really get until maybe the braking for the hairpin. But the caveat is you've got to be careful of the curves through turn 1 and 2. We saw from Safso, his second attempt in Q3, just put his front right tyre on the very inside of the curb and it got all wobbly, got unstable and just lost him a little bit of time. And when you're battling so hard and you have to take out a part of the circuit, the apex of the corner effectively, just limits the racetrack even more and implies or imposes an even bigger squeeze on the drivers that are battling so hard.
It does indeed, and yeah, it'll be a race start to keep all our eyes on. Luckily, we've got you, Tom, and we've also got John. John, what did you make of that qualifying session, and what's the run down to Suzuka turn 1 really like? You know, what are our drivers going to be thinking, especially those who are right slap bang in the midfield?
I think the sort of wild card of the tyres threw a lot of drivers off in the qualifying sessions. Whether it was adapting to a tyre, just finding the sweet spot, maybe even drivers, as I said, making a setup adjustment that really didn't pay off toward the end on the soft tyres. It might have just jumbled things up, and that means, as we've said, that overtaking is going to be actually a priority. For example, for Alex Gillen and a few other drivers at the back of the pack. But, you know, there's a few opportunities with obviously DRS, and there's quite a few curbs where you can lose traction, for example, and leave yourself vulnerable. But a bit like Kimi Räikkönen in 2005, the best opportunity is probably round the outside in turn 1. But such a difficult corner, especially at the start, with multiple lines converging quite literally into one line for turn 2. I think it will be played out on strategy, and we've seen quite a few races and quite a few championship deciders where strategy has played out in, well, just drivers having the pace and then losing it right at the end to team decisions. The drivers only have themselves to blame here in the F1 game because they make their own decisions, but it means that the extra pressure is out, and toward the end of the season that can really throw a spanner in the works. We've got a lot of spanners in the works today.
A lot of spanners, absolutely. I mean, that's just not, we're not talking about just me, by the way. But the point is, the qualifying has done its best to really mix up the grid. And Razin, as one of the championship protagonists, has really taken to this really well. Starts second place, just behind Grid Jokes, in that Haas. I mean, all eyes are on him down towards turn 1. Is he going to go for that risky move down the inside of Grid Jokes, or perhaps he's going to wait for a little bit later on in the lap there, Tom?
I think he can afford to be patient. We know he's got the pace and the consistency. What we have to say about Grid Jokes is this is a foreign position for him to be in the Creator Series. Yes, we've seen how quick he is, but he hasn't taken a pole position before. Will he be a little bit flighty? Will he be a little bit nervous on that run into turn number 1? Does Razin Chai want to get embroiled in that, considering he does still have a championship to fight for? So I don't think he needs to be on the money straight away, does Razin. Obviously, you don't want to drop behind the likes of Jake and Lolly and Cream because they are going to be hard to pass. Razin's just got to keep his wits about him. He knows that he can play the long game, though.
And John, coming into this then, talks of maybe 1 stop or 2 stop. I mean, this is Creator Series. A safety car really isn't that far away. But Japan sometimes likes to throw us a curveball in terms of strategy then. Drivers maybe trying to avoid the soft tyres. They had the, they use the 2 sets if they wanted to in that qualifying session. Of course, we're going through a bit of a lobby reset at the moment. So everyone's now just migrating from the qualifying lobby now over to the race lobby. But what can we expect in terms of strategy coming into today?
Yeah, it's going to really depend on where you are on track. If you're stuck behind a driver, you will have no choice but to go for maybe a 2-stop strategy, depending on safety car, obviously. A lot of the strategy of this race is not getting stuck behind a slower driver on a faster set of tires. Say, for example, somebody's on the mediums, you start on the softs, you need to get past them really quickly. So whether we'll see some drivers at the front starting on, for example, the soft compound to try and pull away into the distance just to create that safety zone, that safety buffer for a safety car, we'll have to wait and see. But essentially, it's just going to be about reacting to what you see around you. I can see maybe a few drivers going for a 1-stop for sure, but I think at some point a lot of drivers will be tempted to go for the 2-stop just to force other drivers onto a different strategy and force them to react, basically.
Well, Gareth Allen, I know he's the master of multitasking. He's doing 2 things at once here, but can we get? I think he said that we've got updated standings, including the extra point for Lolinova. There he is. Ask and you shall receive. There's the updated points then. Lolinova getting that extra bonus point for that Inter's pole position now brings him on to 73 points. But just a reminder, this is how it all looks heading into today's Japanese Grand Prix in the Creator Series. This is a massive opportunity for Razin to really drag himself back into this title bout.
Yeah, for sure. And putting himself P1 there after the previous races, you know, you kind of have to just play it cautiously now for Meraki. He's in quite a good position. You know, Tiamat Marduk starting P8, if I remember correctly. Alex Gillen starting P15. So, you know, if you look just at points, all Meraki has to do is have a clean, consistent race. But, I mean, we know how it works in Creator Series. You know, you want to do that. And caution can end up being really bad for you. It can end up just leading to other drivers basically not taking you out of the race, but forcing you perhaps off track because they have nothing to lose and they know that you have something to lose. So for Meraki, he's in a good position, but not an enviable position as well, because he's a target and everybody is gunning for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And a word on Meraki as well was that, yes, he had a quiet race out in Brazil, but still ended up with a podium. Even he was surprised about that one. But I'm delighted to say we're going to focus our attention with an interview with the pole sitter in Grid Jokes. Grid Jokes, welcome along. You said Singapore on top. I was watching your stream as you said it. What about that for a lap?
Yeah, but it was probably because of the car.
No, it's all driver. It's all driver talent, Grid Jokes. How are you feeling then? Pole position, Japanese Grand Prix, with probably the most notoriously difficult turns 1 and 2, probably on the entire calendar.
Yeah, I guess I just had to focus on getting a start and not wheel spinning as much and keeping Lolly behind, because he's really fast and he did take Inter's pole from me, so he'll be quite the challenge to keep behind.
He's got that point on you, Grid Jokes, but you've got that pole position as well. I mean, you've got Razin right behind you as well. He was within 2/100ths of a second of you. I mean, you're going to have him breathing down your neck in towards turn 1. Not to sort of put you under any pressure whatsoever, but I think that's a first pole position for you in the Creator Series. That's a landmark for you.
No, it's actually a second. I got one like 2 seasons ago. Yeah, in the Mercedes as well.
See, I've not updated my notes. I'm a fraud. There we go. But Grid Jokes is not the fraud. He's put it on pole position. Well, talk us through Suzuka then, because this is a car underneath you that seems to really like this. You managed to grab that pole position. How are you feeling heading into the race today?
Honestly, Suzuka isn't really a strong track, but I just like the flow of Sector 1, and the hairpin is also quite a challenging corner, but I like the challenge. It flows quite well, and when the setup's right, the track really is just amazing to drive.
We were also talking in the pre-show about how qualifying was so crucial here, because you've only got the one DRSO down towards turns 1 and 2, down that start-finish straight. Elsewhere, there's not very many overtaking opportunities. The fact you put it on pole position, you've surely got one foot in front of the other at this point.
Yeah, but I think tyre management is also like a key factor, especially in this game, because tyre wear really does affect a lot of things, so the strategy will be interesting, whether you want to do a 1 or 2 stop to have a tyre advantage or not.
And of course, pole position for you. Where's a good finishing position for you in the race? I mean, the obvious answer is a race win, but what's your target for today?
I guess just top 3. I won't expect too much, because I have some fast guys right behind me chasing me down, and who knows, maybe some crazy things will happen.
It's the Creator
Series. Just hope for a podium. Yeah.
It's Creator Series. Always something crazy happens, Grid Jokes. Well, hopefully we get to see you on display and hopefully get that podium. Grid Jokes will let you get ready for the race. Thank you so much for chatting to us, and good luck in the race. Thanks. Singapore on top then in Japan. And, well, it's a great lap from Grid Jokes. He said himself it's probably due to the car. I refute that. That was definitely all driver skill. Hey, Tom.
He's always been a really decent qualifier. Obviously, he's not started this high before, but I don't think that's too out of the blue to see that Grid Jokes is starting from pole position, especially considering he's in a Mercedes, which should be fairly decent around this circuit. Obviously, like he alluded to, the